Welcome everyone to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. Those of you who have joined us in the live studio audience and those who have joined us online from various places around the world. It's a great pleasure today to welcome you to this Sunday program. Especially today we have a guest who is an international treasure. His base is in New Zealand. However, he's only there 4 months out of the year. The rest of the year he's traveling to various places around the world propagating Krishna consciousness. Famous for his work for the BBT, not only in helping to design, copy edit, give titles for various chapters and go through the books meticulously in the early days of when Srila Prabhupada was presenting the Srimad Bhagavatam and other books. His Holiness Devamrit Swami also distinguished himself by preaching behind the Iron Curtain at a time when doing so was punishable by imprisonment and death. He participated in building that yatra from a seedling up to now the revolutionary movement that it is now in the Russia, the former Soviet Union. And now he also has a project in Gita Nagari where he promotes natural farming, cow protection, and natural living and so forth, as well as being a champion for book distribution all over the world. He's also developed unique teaching centers for Krishna consciousness, originally called LOFT programs, which revolutionized the outreach of Krishna consciousness in many parts of the world. There are many more accolades that I'm missing, but it's our great pleasure to have such a pure representative of Srila Prabhupada here at ISKCON of Silicon Valley. And I invite all of you to please welcome him with a rousing ISV welcome. Please. Devamrit Swami.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Jai Vishabam Sabadajikacharya, Stoic CC Mud, AC Bhakti Vedanta, Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jai Vishnupad Sabadajikacharya, Stoic CC Mud, Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasi Thakur Prabhupada Ki. Gaur Premanandi. Being here at this chakra of Lord Caitanya's Sankirtan mission fills the consciousness with many illuminations because of the divine activities here. It's easy for divine thoughts to fill the mind. Today I wanted to speak to you a bit about the universal significance of Lord Caitanya's Sankirtan mission. How much of the world are we actually affecting? Can anyone measure the potency of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission? In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antilila, chapter 2, you get a glimpse into how Krishna, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, flooded the whole universe with love of Krishna. You might think maybe it's an exaggeration. The universal impact of Lord Chaitanya's campaign to re-engage conditioned souls in devotional service. How much of the world did such a campaign actually affect? Indeed, is it possible that Lord Caitanya's Sankirtan mission affected the whole universe? Or is that just kind of some kind of rah-rah talk? Yeah. Things we say in order to fire ourselves up, you know? Things we say in order to show that our team is the best. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita analyzes how Lord Caitanya did it. 3 methods, basically. We can quickly review them. But before we discuss those 3 methods that Mahaprabhu used, we want to consider our present situation. It's always good to do what's called an environmental scan, noting what's happening in the surrounding world, while at the same time doing an internal scan, knowing what's going on within us. When I was speaking at the Potomac Temple outside Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago, I dealt with the theme, Bhakti, in the world, but not of the world. I don't suppose many of you recognize where that phrase comes from, but since you are living in the USA, which is known to be a Christian country with lots of nuclear weapons, it's good to know a little something about what is the predominant religion. Statistics show that 75% of the people in the USA identify in some way, to some degree, as Christians. In the New Testament of the Bible, you find some very simple instructions about bhakti from Jesus Christ. We would say that to understand those instructions in depth, Bhagavad Gita is the proper option. Still, you'll find the subject of love of God, the need for love of God, even the need to love God purely with no motive. You'll find that there in the Bible in a very encapsulated way. So just think about it. How to be in the world but not of the world. This statement is attributed to Jesus Christ. Actually, Bhagavad Gita explains the whole spiritual technology for doing that. How to be spiritual while within the material world. This is high mysticism. It's like telling someone, I want you to submerge yourself in the ocean while remaining completely dry. Now, in your everyday engagements, work, school, errands, you're up and about in the world. So how does the Krishna conscious person handle being spiritual while residing within the material body, with the material mind, and residing within the material atmosphere? This is the greatest technology, applied spiritual technology. Indeed, by following Krishna's science in Bhagavad Gita, you can be in the world, but not of the world. Now, sometimes people think that if I become too absorbed in bhakti, I won't be able to relate properly to other people. I'll be just so much locked in on Krishna, Krishna. I'll be lost in my own world. I won't be able to function properly. In fact, often the fear is there that if I become too spiritually focused, I'll lose my competitive edge in the workplace. I won't be able to swim with the sharks anymore, and this world requires that kind of attitude. Bhakti will make me very peaceful, too pacified. I'm thinking of one devotee I know in New Zealand, as His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu was explaining. Yes, I spent about 4 months in and out. 4 months of the year in and out there. So I know one devotee who was a very good student. He got his master's degree in some IT specialty. And then he was applying for his PhD at University of Manchester in the UK, because he did his master's degree in the UK. So his grade point average was tops. All his professors gave him sterling recommendations. He went for his interview to enter the PhD program, and the department head interviewing him talked with him and then gave her frank assessment. She said, I don't know what to do. Your grades are tops. I know all the professors who recommended you. Your recommendations are first class. But when I look at you, I just don't see the passion necessary to succeed. I don't see that drive in you. I don't know how you got all those top grades and top recommendations, because when I look at you, you're so peaceful, you're so placid. Basically, she told him, get real. I mean, no one succeeds with that kind of attitude. Like, where's your killer instinct? Where's your desire to thrust yourself forward? Do whatever it takes for success. So the devotee was puzzled. Yeah. In any case, because his grades were so good and his recommendations were so good, he was allowed to enter the PhD program. But he was baffled by this kind of analysis. I tried to explain to him because he presented the situation to me. I said, you've got to act a bit. You've got to do a bit of theatrics, You're playing it too straight, It reminds me of one time in Australia. Devotees who worked at IBM told me this. This is before IBM downsized in Australia and sent all its work to be done in India. But anyway, this is when they still had a few hundred IT people in Australia. So a big managemental guru from IBM in the USA was coming to Australia to fire up the IT people there. So there was a big gathering at an auditorium, and the Indian-American managemental guru was on the stage. The whole auditorium was dark, and the spotlight was on him, and he was lecturing about the kind of employee that IBM will retain. So he was walking back and forth on the stage, and the spotlight is following him. Then he started walking out into the audience, and the spotlight would follow him amongst the 200 IT personnel there. And as he was walking, he would challenge, "What is the kind of person that we will keep? I want to know, when you first wake up in the morning, when your eyes open, do you think of your job? Those are the kind of people we'll retain. All others can go." So he was walking up and down the aisles. The spotlight would follow, and he would just walk up to some. "So, what do you think when your eyes open? Do you think of IBM?" He did that to several persons. He even went up. He didn't know it, but he went up to a few devotees. And, "What do you think of when you wake up?" And of course, the devotees played the game. "Oh, we think of our jobs." So that's the kind of attitude that this world often demands. So I tried to explain it to this devotee who was doing his PhD in the UK. I said, "Look, you've got a fake passion. As people feel uncomfortable." So finally, the department head, while the devotee was doing his PhD work, took a liking to him. Well, he's not passionate. He doesn't have that go-getter killer instinct, but anyway, his work is excellent. So she took him under her wing, and she began to give him some advice. She said, here's the way it works. It's not so much how great your PhD work is. It's all about whom you drink with. Make sure you go to the parties. When we send you to some research conference, there's always some gathering afterwards. Make sure you attend those and have a few drinks and make yourself known in that way. That's how to get ahead. That's how to get your PhD done very quickly. In that way, your success will be guaranteed in the future. So I give these examples to point out that often for our devotees, it's a challenge how to be spiritual within the material world, because the material world is demanding of you in a certain way. You must be passionate. I was speaking in a temple in New Jersey, Plainfield, New Jersey. It's known as Central New Jersey Temple. And I was explaining some of the illusions that people in this country actually had about the working world. illusions that people clung to as a happy ending to the whole story of job, occupation, work. You may not know it, but back in 1930, during the time of a very famous economist, still famous today and still influential today through his words and concepts, John Maynard Keynes. He said in 1930 that when you look at the 21st century, you're going to see, right now, that means a time when there'll be a 5-day weekend. People will work only 15 hours a week. And instead of a 2-day weekend, they'll have a 5-day weekend. So therefore, their main problem is going to be what to do with so much leisure time. This was a very big notion. He predicted people would get more into hobbies and family life. So I remember when I was a little boy growing up in New York City in the mid-1950s, I was reading the Sunday newspaper, and there were articles about the future, the near future. In a few decades, here is what will be the cutting edge occupation. Are you ready for it? Leisure time engineer. Yeah, people would have so much leisure time that they would need an engineer to help them figure out how to use their leisure time. You have any leisure time engineers here? Does anyone require a leisure time engineer? But people actually believe this. Now, do you know what the reality is? Around 1980, you could be reasonably sure that if you're a wealthy, successful person, you would work less hours than someone who's middle class or low income. That was true up until 2005, when things changed. If you are a wealthy, well-moneyed person, you're actually working much more than the middle class and the low-income class. Because work is your reason for living. It's like your religion. Just like some people go to church or to the temple, to the mosque, to the synagogue, you go to your office. It gives your life a sense of purpose. It gives your life a sense of dedication. So this is a very interesting situation, that you identify with your job as your self-realization. So in other words, instead of your work involving material production, it now mostly involves identity production. You're going to work to produce your own identity and sense of fulfillment. And you're urged to live in that way. Parents urge their children, you should find a job that you enjoy. Find a job that fulfills you. Just like, especially in California, you may have heard, when you're looking for your spouse, you should look for a soulmate. So similarly, when you're looking for a job, you should find a job that's like your soulmate. Previously, you would get a job because it's a necessity. Then the next step is you don't want a job that's just a necessity. You want a career. A career gives social status. But that's also outmoded now. You don't want a job. You don't want a career. You want a calling. A job that is your swarup. That's your eternal constitutional position. So this is what's going on now. Some of you may have remembered years ago I told you of a study done in Silicon Valley, of course. And to qualify for this study, this is described in the New York Times, you needed a house that was worth $2 million. You needed investments that were at least totaling $2 million. And you needed $2 million in cash. Then you could qualify for this, to be part of this sociological research. And amazingly, in almost every case, all the persons who qualified with these three attributes, they all said, I don't have enough money. I'm not rich. I'm just getting by. You don't understand the world these days. $2 million in cash, $2 million worth of investments, a house worth $2 million. That's nothing. That's no security at all. And often, the men especially would say that, look, I'm not doing this just for me. Why am I doing it for? The children. But the man is working 70 hours a week. His children never see him. But he's doing it for the children. And what's even worse, quite a few of the men who qualified for this Silicon Valley study said that, look, let me explain to you the reality, the nitty-gritty of the situation. All right, I'm actually worth about $20 million. But across the street is a man worth $100 million. My boy plays with the son of that man. How do you think my boy feels? Playing with another boy whose father has $100 million and I only have $20 million. How do you think my boy feels? So there's something about the way this world is constructed that doesn't allow satisfaction, doesn't allow satiation. So therefore, the devotee is very conscientious about how to be in the world but not of the world. You have to function, take care of your family, take care of yourself. But how do you do that without becoming implicated in this whirlpool of material desire? Because you don't want to wind up like those persons who can't be satisfied, although they're very wealthy, can't feel secure, think that their children are disadvantaged because their children are playing with children of fathers who have much more money. What is it that drives such a lust and greed machine onward? And we should be very afraid that we don't want to be caught in that. So the question is, can the mission of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu cope with all this rampant greed and lust and envy? Religious belief doesn't seem to get the job done. The USA, in media overseas, like in Australia and New Zealand, the USA is referred to as that religious country. It's said sarcastically, meaning the people there claim to be religious, but look what they're doing. Look at their social fabric. Look at their psychology. In other words, what's the use of religion? If this is what it means to be a religious country, you can forget it. The World Health Organization has stated that amongst the developed countries in this world, first world countries, the USA is one of the least happy when you measure happiness by standard psychological measures. Among the least happy, but it reigns number one by far as having the most anxiety. This is the greatness. By far, number one in anxiety. So much so that a third of all Americans will sometime in their life experience anxiety disorders. But if you're young, if you're under 30, the percentage goes up from a third to 50%. So obviously persons are having problems coping with this world. And so naturally our own devotees are wondering, can I handle it? How do I deal with this world? You don't want to wind up riddled with so much anxiety. And when there are anxiety disorders, depression is often accompanying the anxiety. You don't want all that. What to do? When I'm speaking at universities, I often point out how the American Psychological Association, organization of psychologists, has pointed out that the nation is on the verge of a stress-induced public health crisis. So again, people are having problems coping with the world. Religious belief, religious theology, religious doctrine doesn't seem to have made a difference. So, especially here in California, many persons will say, well, hey, you believe this, I believe that, whatever, you know. In other words, what you believe really doesn't make a difference. Just believe in something. That's the point. Believe in something. And because the result will probably be the same. But whatever helps you get through the day, that's fine. Believe in that. People say like that because they don't see any significant difference brought about by religious belief. So therefore, we may start to wonder about the gifts of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Is it just another doctrine, another dogma? Maybe it's, for some of you, just a cultural inheritance. Does Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's mission have the potency for mass transformation? So let's look at Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's description of how Mahaprabhu spread his influence. 3 ways. Sakshat darshan, by meeting persons directly. You see this especially when Lord Caitanya was touring South India. He had his Sankirtan technique. Whoever crossed his path, he would infuse with love of Krishna. And then that person would go and interact with other persons and infuse them with love of Krishna. And those persons would, in other words, Mahaprabhu would set off a chain reaction just by the first personal interaction with him, the Sakshat Darshan. So while he was touring South India, you could see that. But not only while he was touring South India, but also when he was in Jagannath Puri. Persons would come and visit him and get his direct personal darshan in that way. Not only persons from India would come and see him, persons from other planets, Chaitanya Charitamrita describes, would come for his audience. And then they would go back to their particular planet, their particular cosmic dimension. And that way, Kaviraj Goswami assures us that Mahaprabhu covered the whole universe, all three planetary systems, by these three ways. And we described the first one, direct meeting, Sakshat Darshan. The second method, Avesh. Mahaprabhu would transform a devotee into an Avesh avatar, an empowered bearer of Mahaprabhu's presence. In other words, Lord Caitanya would enter someone's heart and manifest so much of his potency that that person would be an empowered incarnation. This happened with Nakula Brahmachari. Everyone throughout Bengal heard about it. Nakula Brahmachari is filled with such a presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that whoever sees him begins to chant and dance in ecstasy. He even had the Gorakanti, the effulgence, the golden effulgence of Mahaprabhu. So everywhere the news spread, and people were coming to see him because of this. Shivananda Sain, that special associate of Lord Caitanya, heard about this, but he was very skeptical. I'll believe it only when I make a test. So Shivananda Sain went to where people said Nakula Brahmachari was staying. There were crowds of people surrounding Nakula Brahmachari. But Shivananda Sain told himself, I'll make a test. If Nakula Brahmachari knows I'm here, number one, and number two, if he knows my special meditative mantra, then I'll accept that he's an Avesh avatar, that he's empowered, he's carrying extremely rare presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he went to where the crowds of people were, and he stayed on the outside of the crowds, at the periphery. Meanwhile, Nakula Brahmachari suddenly announced, Shivananda Sain, Shivananda Sain. The people started running everywhere. Is there someone in the crowd named Shivananda Sain? So, indeed, although Nakula Brahmachari couldn't see through the whole crowd that Shivananda Sain was there, by his empowerment he knew. So Shivananda Sain came forward. All right, criterion number one has been fulfilled. He knew I was there amidst a massive crowd. What about criterion number two? Nakula Brahmachari told him, I know what you're thinking. Your mantra is the Gaura Gopal mantra. It's 4 syllables, Radha Krishna, which, Srila Prabhupada explains, is the same as the Gaura mantra, 4 syllables. Gauranga. So after fulfilling Shivananda Sain's 2 prerequisites, his requirements, Nakula Brahmachari said to him, now do you lay aside, you set aside your skepticism? So this is method number 2. That Mahaprabhu spread his mission. Number 3 is even more special. The Avirbhava, special manifestation, sort of, or so to speak, out of nowhere of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Many of you know he did that especially in 4 places. He would apparently just appear out of nothingness, attracted by the devotion. This is a very important point. The devotion of the devotee can attract the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So you know, wherever Nityananda danced, that Avesh appearance of Mahaprabhu would manifest. In the house of Raghava Pandit, especially because of Raghava Pandit's cooking. And in the home of Srivas Thakur, whenever there was Kirtan. And in the home of Shachi Mata. So how did devotees get to experience this? A very surprising way. One nephew of Shivananda Sain, Srikanta Sain, came to see Lord Caitanya in Jagannath Puri. And Lord Caitanya said, when you go back to Bengal, tell all the devotees there, don't come to Puri this year. Forbid them from coming to Puri. Now, if you know Chaitanya Charitamrita, you know that the devotees going from Bengal to Puri was such an emotional, transcendently emotional affair. And their departure also, when they would go back to Bengal from Puri, such a heart-exploding experience of bhakti. So now Mahaprabhu is saying, don't come. Srikanta Sena carried that message to Bengal. Advaita Acharya himself was about to leave to go to Jagannath Puri. But when he and the other devotees heard that Mahaprabhu said, don't come, not only don't come, but I will be coming to where you are, they were happy. Otherwise, if he had just said, don't come, that would have been very difficult to bear. But he said, I will be going to where you are. So they were all so happy. And he gave the month that he would be coming. So all the devotees at that time, predicted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they're waiting every evening. They would wait. But he didn't come. So along comes Nrsingananda Brahmachari. And he sees devotees like Shivananda Sain and Jagadananda looking very morose. He sits down next to them and says, what is the problem here? Why are you all looking so sad? And they told him, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told us don't go to Jagannath Puri, that he'd be coming to where we are, but he hasn't come. What was Nrsingananda Brahmachari's response? Watch this. I'll bring him here in 3 days. So the devotees thought, well, he's such a powerful devotee, we're not going to doubt him. So 2 days passed. And then the Sringananda Brahmachari told them, I've already brought the Lord as far as Panihati. In other words, he's getting closer. He's getting closer. So the devotees got very excited. It's working. It's working. He's actually bringing Mahaprabhu. We don't doubt him. It's Sringananda Brahmachari. Okay, ki jai. So then the morning came of the third morning. And the Sringananda Brahmachari said, everyone, bring me the most exquisite ingredients so I can cook. So naturally, all the devotees rushed to gather all the cooking ingredients that Sringananda Brahmachari wanted. And he made 3 offerings. One for Jagannath, one for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and one for Lord Nrsingadev. Because Lord Nrsingadev is Sringananda Brahmachari's worshipable deity. His original name is Pradumna Brahmachari, but because of his dedication to Nrsingadev, Mahaprabhu gave him that name, Nrsingananda Brahmachari. So the devotees, you can imagine how excited they are. It's happening. It's happening. Today is the day Sringananda Brahmachari is cooking. There'll be 3 offerings. So Sringananda Brahmachari makes the offerings, the 3 plates, and then waits. Unseen by everyone, except Sringananda Brahmachari, comes Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and eats all the offerings. So Nrsingadev Brahmachari is saying, how can you do this, my Lord? How can you take all the offerings? I know that you're one with Jagannath. That's all right. But my worshipable deity is Nrsingadev. You took his offering too. Lord Caitanya wanted to show Nrsingadev Brahmachari that he's one with Nrsingadev also. So the devotees, like Shivananda saying, they're intimate associates of Mahaprabhu. They didn't see this. They didn't see what was going on. And then Nrsingadev Brahmachari makes a surprising request to them. Mahaprabhu came, he ate all the offerings. My worshipable deity Nrsingadev didn't get anything. We need to cook again. So the devotees then had a bit of a crisis of faith, you might say. Well, not a crisis of faith like we may have, that should I really be Krishna conscious or not? But a crisis of faith in terms of, well, we know Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can do the impossible, but we didn't see him come. At the same time, Nrsingadev Brahmachari is a most advanced devotee. Maybe he's just speaking like this in ecstatic love. He's just lost in the delirium of pure love of Godhead. That was the way they analyzed the situation. Because we didn't see Lord Caitanya, and he's such a great devotee. He just may be speaking like that in his intense bhava. So anyway, they did what Nrsingadev Brahmachari said, and they brought more foodstuffs, and Nrsingadev Brahmachari cooked again. So the devotees, they accepted the situation, but they were doubtful. Not doubtful about whether they should be Krishna conscious, but doubtful, well, maybe he's just under the influence of pure love and just speaking in delirium, and they kept that doubt with them. So later, in the year, Shivananda Sain went to Puri to see Mahaprabhu. And while he was there in the audience with Mahaprabhu, he heard Lord Caitanya say a surprising thing. You know that month that happened some time ago? I went to Bengal, and there Nrsingananda Brahmachari cooked me the most ecstatic lunch. So at that time, Shivananda Sain realized it was true. Mahaprabhu manifested his presence there. We didn't see him, but because of Nrsingananda Brahmachari's intense love, he was able to see that presence of Mahaprabhu. So in the conclusion of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describing this Leela, he points out that this principle is not only true for Nrsingananda Brahmachari, but it's true for any devotee who has love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That pure love subdues Lord Caitanya. So that is the kind of bhakti we want, because by subduing Mahaprabhu with our pure service and pure love, then you can see massive changes in the world. And the world right now needs massive changes. You know, in 4th Canto Bhagavatam, so many of you read the Bhagavatam here and distribute sets of Bhagavatam. So in the 4th canto, during the reign of Maharaj Vena, the totally vile king, the condition of the citizens was described as being on a log, being an ant on a log that has fire at both ends. This is the situation of people today. They're powerless in terms of making a peaceful, harmonious world. They can't do it politically, and they can't do it environmentally. The fire at one end of the log is the threat of nuclear weaponry. The fire at the other end of the log is the threat of environmental havoc. Human beings are trapped on this log, and they can't solve either situation. You look at the world and national situation, and it's obvious. Who knows the art of how to be peaceful? Who knows the art of how to live in harmony? Everyone seems to know totally the opposite. How can we antagonize one another? How can we destroy the environment or ignore environmental problems? What is the solution? Is bhakti, is our Krishna consciousness just some kind of tunnel affair in which we just focus on chanting Hare Krishna in such a way that we disregard other living entities, disregard the world? No, that's not the bhakti that Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita. You know, in chapter 4, text 34, Krishna says, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya. If you want to know the truth about all the different forms of sacrifice that I've explained earlier in this 4th chapter, you need to approach my representative. Pariprasnena sevaya. Inquire submissively and render service. Then you'll be able to understand. So you all know that verse. But what about the next verse? What's the result of following Krishna's instruction? To approach his representative. He says in the next verse, Yajgata na puna moham. If you do this, you won't be in illusion anymore. What's the symptom Krishna describes of your not being in illusion anymore? You'll know all living entities are my parts and parcels. In other words, you'll know how to relate to others. You'll scientifically understand how to see and treat all living entities. That's the result of Krishna consciousness. Those who do not understand the science of Bhagavad Gita think that you've just adopted some religious view that narrows your vision. They don't understand how, through the vision of Bhakti, you actually see the harmony of all living entities with their source. We look at the social situation of the country you're living in. Sometimes people wonder, regardless of what your political views are, that's not our point, but regardless of what your political views are, how did people become so acrimonious and so agitated and so disturbed? Did you know one academic study published in the New York Times revealed percentages in terms of the two opposing political parties? You can take your pick, whatever one you like. In each of these two opposing political parties in the USA, 42% of the adherents to each of the parties thought that the other party was evil. 42%. But it gets worse. 20% in each party thought that the opposing party is not human. They're full of animal qualities. It gets even worse. Between 16% in one party and 20% in the other party thought that the world would be a better place if all the people in the other party died. So where is the peace? Where is the unity? So then your question could be, what can devotees do to solve this situation? Through the science of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, we understand that there has been no clearance of the contamination in the heart. Regardless of your religious beliefs, whether you go to a temple, a church, a mosque, or a synagogue, there has been no cleansing of the heart. And this is why people are so agitated and so disturbed and so unable to correct the situation. In fact, what you see happening more and more is a worsening of illusion, taking more shelter of the bodily conception of life. You're feeling minimized. Even worse, you're feeling delegitimatized. You're feeling purposeless in life. Think about your body. Identify more with your body, and then you'll have meaning. You feel like you've lost control. You feel like the world is too complex and too bewildering. You can't figure out what's going on? Here's a solution. Take more shelter of your body. In other words, make the situation worse. This is the solution that's being given to people. You've forgotten your bodily identity, your upadi. The more you take shelter of your upadi, the more you'll have a sense of core purpose in life. I am a this. I am this upadi. I am this material designation. And once you start doing that, you're equipped with 2 benedictions. We would say 2 afflictions. They would say 2 benedictions. Number 1, you have persons who are your allies. You've got the same upadi as me. We're together in this. And what's the other benediction? You've got a different upadi, a different body than mine. Now I have someone to hate. Just see how full my life has become. I've got allies, I've got persons to hate. What more does a human being need? We're laughing with great pity and regret because this is the path to even more problems. But just see, when you're trapped on a material platform, you don't know anything else. So you're an easy victim for manipulators and agitators who stir you up. Any diminution, any personal lack that you feel is because you've forgotten your bodily identification. So we see we have an enormous task ahead of us. Instead of moving away from the bodily conception of life, people are rushing more into it and thinking that'll be the way for satisfaction and fulfillment. So we can see that more than ever, the mercy of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is needed. We have a chance to get some recognition from Krishna by being carriers of Mahaprabhu's mercy. You can clearly see now there is no other solution. So-called religiosity has not extinguished the bodily conception of life. Material welfare work hasn't done that. The situation reminds you of a verse in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. The soul can only be solaced by the representatives of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who are carrying that mercy of Mahaprabhu. When I'm speaking at colleges, I often quote a Chinese saying, which many Americans mistake as a blessing, but actually it's a curse. The saying goes, may you live in interesting times. So normally when you hear that, you think, oh yeah, that'd be great, interesting times, yes, sure. I want to be alive in those kind of situations. But as I said, the saying is actually a curse. May you live in interesting times means may you have a hellish life. However you want to look at this saying, whether it's a blessing or a curse, the fact is right now, the times are very interesting, very peculiar. Because you're distributing the knowledge of Krishna consciousness during a time when people in mass are pointing to more body consciousness. And here you are distributing books which say you're not the body. Maybe other times people were just kind of confused in terms of, well, I may be the body, I may not. Who knows? No one knows. But now they're being agitated and manipulated. You are the body, and your problems are because you forgot you're the body. What is your ethnicity? What is your gender preference? Whatever ethnicity and gender preference you have, you're supposed to be proud of it and broadcast it. In fact, by having a certain body type, you're an expert in that body. And you should be recognized for your expertise. And people should never minimize your expertise that you have just by having a certain body. You can announce yourself in that way, and people should offer their obeisances. You can announce yourself. You can say, you are Gujarati, you are from a certain Gujarati caste, you're living in California. Just by having a designation, people should acknowledge that. It's very important. And of course, you're living in California, so you have to be aware that there are different gender preferences. Whatever gender preference you have should be acknowledged, should be glorified, and you should be recognized as having a certain gender predilection, and you're known to be an expert just by having that particular gender preference. And everyone should be very respectful and mindful. Oh, you are this upadi. Very nice. Can you tell? We should respect the history of your upadi. When I speak at universities, I have to be careful about this because everyone is so sensitive about having their body type, which is generally a mixture these days anyway, but still, you have to respect a person's expertise in just having a certain kind of body. Like when I'm speaking, I was explaining this in Mayapur, so don't be mad at me for explaining it here. If, let's say, you're speaking to a class, and you're telling them you're a spirit soul, part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. As always, someone will raise their hand and say, excuse me, but speaking as an, let's just pull something out of the air, speaking as an Irish-American gay person, and you're supposed to, yes, because you have those bodily predilections, you are the expert, and you're supposed to offer proper respects. Oh, you're speaking as that. Please tell us. Please enlighten us. And then someone else will raise their hand. Speaking as a Thai, French, heterosexual. When it starts to get very ridiculous, I have, at some schools, I have one devotee accompanying me, and he stands up, he raises his hand, I call on him, and he does a parody, but but actually everyone takes it seriously. And he's got a whole string of designations. He says, speaking as a Syrian, Navajo American, African American who's heterosexual, who's married to a woman, and I have 2 children, and everyone's, wow. Like, you're the king of designations. So this is just an example of what's going on these days. Instead of being baffled, am I this body or not, people are being pushed to take more shelter of the body. How is that going to solve their problems? But they're being told, this will solve your problems. Your problems in life are because your ethnicity has been minimized. Your gender preference has been minimized. So the more that we focus on those designations, material conceptions, the more fulfilled you'll be. That's impossible. In discussions with Uddhava in the 11th canto, Krishna talks about this. Krishna explains that the first mistake you make is to identify with the body as the self. Once you do that, then the mode of passion invades your mind. So it's not just an innocent thing. Well, I think I'm the body, and that's that. There, you think you're not the body, I think I am the body. Anyway, life goes on. No, by identifying with the body as the self, the 11th canto explains, then the mode of passion invades your mind, and your mind becomes an instrument for making and changing plans for material gratification. And in this way, you're afflicted with unbearable material desires, because that's what the mode of passion brings along with it. So whether you are dedicated to a career of material gain, whether you're dedicated to some form of bodily gratification, the result is unbearable material desires. What you thought would fulfill yourself leads to agony, because unfulfilled material desires are an agonizing situation. So the whole problem begins with, as Krishna explains to Uddhava, identifying falsely, identifying with the body as the self. Then that mistake leaves you wide open for an invasion by the mode of passion. And so you spend your whole life making and changing plans for material enjoyment. And while doing so, while you're chopping and changing, making and changing, you're afflicted with unbearable material desires. You see, Uddhava had asked Krishna a very interesting question. He said, generally, the human being knows that material existence will lead to distress. But still, the living entity engages in material existence. Why is this? Of course, as we progress deeper into Kali Yuga, you find human beings don't even know that material existence brings distress. They expect fulfillment. They expect satisfaction. Just like we were talking about, the workaholics, they expect life fulfillment by working 70 hours a week. Even though they're wealthy, they want to have a sense of purpose and meaning in life. And then they tell their children, you've got to find a job you're passionate about. None of you tell your children that, do you? Yeah. Mataji here says yes. Find a job you're passionate about. If you're passionate about your job, then you'll have a sense of being, a sense of being fulfilled. Don't just get a job remember, a job is a necessity. Career is for social status. But a calling. It's like something holy, isn't it? That's what you want. A job that's like a soulmate. But all that propaganda is just setting people up for mass disappointment, because no passionate absorption will fulfill you, will satisfy you. So by saying these things, you're just creating a situation where the children, society as a whole, will become very frustrated, overloaded with stress, saturated with anxiety. like Krishna describes in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Chintam aparimayam cha. Saturated with anxiety till the end of life. Mohajala samavrata. Enmeshed in a network of illusion. The discussion with Uddhava went further. Uddhava asked a very intriguing question, which is very important for our being in the world, but not of the world. Because unless you understand the answer to this question, you'll be baffled in your attempt for being Krishna conscious. You'll be confused. You won't be able to handle being in a material body, in the material world, while trying to be spiritual. So what is the question that came up? Krishna explained to Uddhava that there's a topic raised by the Kumaras to Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma was perplexed momentarily by this question. The question raised by the Kumaras was, the senses are always flowing into the sense objects. But it's a two-way street. The sense objects are always flowing into the senses. This loop is going on and on and on. Therefore, how can anyone actually be self-realized? How can anyone actually function spiritually? When you have this intimate relationship going on between the senses and the sense objects, one's flowing into the other, and the other's flowing back into that one. It just goes on and on, this loop. You can think about it. It's a very brilliant analysis. Of course, it's coming from the four Kumars. And that's why Krishna is raising it in his discussion with Uddhava. Because Uddhava had asked that question. Why do human beings, when they know material life is distressful, why do they still push on with it? Are they so dumb, like a goat or a pig? Or what's going on? So Krishna is explaining the setup. Krishna is explaining the situation, why the living entity becomes absorbed in such madness. Krishna is describing the workings of material nature. The senses are flowing into the sense objects. The sense objects are flowing into the senses. It's an intense affair that just goes on and on and on, birth after birth. So what to do? Brahma didn't know. Brahma was baffled momentarily. So then what happened? To solve the situation of Brahma's bewilderment, Hamsa avatar appeared. The swan avatar. The swan has the ability with its beak to separate milk from water. So similarly, the Bhagavatam describes that Hamsa avatar appeared. The Lord, in his swan incarnation, appeared to separate the pure consciousness of Brahma from any bewilderment. So the Hamsa avatar began to explain. In a nutshell, he said, it's impossible to solve this affair between the senses and the sense objects materially. It's impossible. It's always going to go on. The material senses are going to flow into the sense objects. And the sense objects, in turn, are going to flow into the material senses. You can't materially stop this. So what do? Do we give up? Maybe sometimes you've wondered that yourself. This is impossible. Sometimes you might even want to blame Krishna. Right? Krishna, you make bhakti sound so wonderful. And we agree it is wonderful. But it's also impossible. How can you torture us in this way, Krishna? You dangle something in front of us that's so sweet, but then who can do it? That's basically the Kumara's question to Brahma. Who can stop this intense love affair between the senses and the sense objects? It's spontaneous. Sometimes when we feel hopeless, helpless, maybe I should just believe in Krishna while living like everyone else. I'll just be a normal person. I'll come to the temple once a year on Janmashtami. I'll put some coins in the hundi. But as far as practicing bhakti, I can't do it. It seems like I'll always be suffering this syndrome, this phenomenon of the senses flowing into the sense objects flowing into the senses. What to do? But then you don't want to doubt the whole science of Bhagavad Gita, right? So what do you say? Well, what Krishna says is true and it's working for others, but it's just me, it's just not, for me, it doesn't work. It's true. Bhagavan has spoken it. But just for me, right now, it just doesn't apply. Therefore, I will wait till I'm 65 or 70. And then, once I'm past my material days, then I will apply what Krishna says. Yes, there are others, like there are children here. It works for you, right? But they're special. And there are some other adults here. It works for them. But they're like, mystic yogis. Vaisheshika Prabhu and his wife Nirakula Mataji, they're from the spiritual world. But for us, it's just not working. But of course, it is true. But what Bhagavan says is correct. But right now, for our life, it doesn't seem to be happening. So what was Hamsa Avatar's answer to this riddle? He said, more or less, that on the material platform, there is no solution. This loop goes on and on and on. Material senses into the material sense objects into the material senses. Birth after birth, this just goes on and on. What's the solution? You have to go to a higher level. It's like what Albert Einstein said. A problem is never solved on the same level that it originates. So bhakti is the perfection of whatever he meant by his statement. You have to, Hamsa Avatar said, go to the spiritual level. You can't find the solution on the material level. You're trapped on the material level. The game is rigged against you. You go to the spiritual level. And what is the spiritual level? Engaging your senses in Krishna's service. That's why in Bhagavad Gita, what did Krishna tell Arjuna? Mam anusmara yujam cha. Fight and think of me. That's the perfection of being in the world but not of the world. Nimitramacham bhavasavasachan. Arjuna, you can just be an instrument for me. You act according to my will. So that is what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is asking us. Remember when he was touring South India and he went to the home of a Brahmana who gave him such a Wonderful reception. The Brahmana and his family, they offered puja to Mahaprabhu. They washed his feet, and the husband took the water and put it on the heads of his family. And then he made his proposal to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, I can no longer tolerate the Vishwa Taranga, the waves of material life. I can't handle it anymore. It's too much for me. Take me with you. Well, he was a family man. But you could appreciate his honesty. I can't handle this ocean of samsara. Let me go with you. He was having difficulty being in the world, but not of the world. And seeing Mahaprabhu in his home crystallized his conclusions. What is the use in me pushing on? Let me just go with you. And what was Mahaprabhu's answer? Don't speak like this again. You follow my order. You teach others about Krishna consciousness. In this way, you'll have my association once again. In fact, in this way, I'll always be with you. So that is the secret of Yare Deko Tare Koho Krishna Upadesh. You teach the science of Krishna according to your capacity. Bhakti is meant for the whole world. The sun may rise first in the east, apparently, but the sun is for everyone. Similarly, Krishna's instructions are for everyone. The greatest thrill in life is to see how everyone in the world can take to Krishna Bhakti. We want to have that kind of experience, that kind of realization. Now is a great time to do that because it's more and more obvious that there's no material solution. People are so disturbed, they're so angry, they're filled with insatiable material desires. They're taking more shelter of their body. A new type of anxiety emerges every year. The latest one to be officially recognized by psychologists is called eco-anxiety. Ecological anxiety. Climate change, who can stop it? My children, how will they handle it? Their children, how will they handle it? It just goes on and on and on. We're so helpless. So you have social anxiety, moral anxiety, eco-anxiety, existential anxiety. This is a great opportunity for giving the medicine Lord Caitanya has prescribed. A devotee is the greatest opportunist. When people are most bereft of spiritual knowledge and spiritual lifestyle, that's the greatest opportunity for a follower of Mahaprabhu to get his mercy. Normally, you would think the opposite, right? When people are very fallen, that's the worst time, the worst circumstances for carrying out Lord Chaitanya's mission. But no, actually, the acharyas say the opposite. The more fallen the people are, the bigger the opportunity is for you to get the mercy of Mahaprabhu. So you have to be very opportunistic. Like enterprising, like an entrepreneur. You see an opportunity for profit. The people are bewildered. They're taking more shelter of their body. This is a chance for me to attract the mercy of Mahaprabhu more than ever. So you have to know how to seize the situation like that. Normally, we'd be very intimidated that, oh, things are getting worse, people are more and more bewildered. But the follower of Mahaprabhu becomes more and more, takes more and more initiative. The people are more fallen, that's more of an opportunity for me to be recognized by the Panchatattva. And the Panchatattva say, the more knowledge of Krishna, the science of Krishna is spread, the easier it is for people to become Krishna conscious. You want to bring about the situation in which so many people that you meet on the street, in their homes, say, oh, I've seen you before. That's a great benediction. And you want them to see you again. In the early days of spreading Lord Caitanya's mission in the USA, we were always, as Sankirtan devotees, we were always trying to find places where people hadn't seen us before and it was fresh. We would say like that to our Sankirtan team. Oh, this is fresh. Wow, they've never seen us before. But how long can that go on? If the Sankirtan movement is successful, people will see you. Now we understand. If they've seen you before, they're so fortunate. And guess what? They're going to see you again, and again, and again. The more they see you, the more fortunate they become. So we're happy when people say, oh, I've seen you before. I've seen those books before. That means they're becoming more and more fortunate. Now, the present situation of increased bodily identification looks very intimidating. You heard the statistics I gave about what the opposing political parties think of each other. But for the distributor of Lord Caitanya's mercy, you see a special opportunity. Let me do my little part to help these people to the mercy of Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu. I can get special recognition in these days. That's being spiritually opportunistic. So please remember that the love of the devotee, the bhakti of a devotee can attract the presence of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. This is the principle that Kaviraj Goswami wants to teach by explaining those leelas, the three ways Mahaprabhu is present: Sakshat Darshan, Avesh, and Avir Bhava. We beg that somehow or other in this life we can attract more and more the presence of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And then you'll see impossible things happen. You'll have a front row seat on seeing the miracle of Mahaprabhu's mission spreading in mass. Things begin by our recognizing this is a great opportunity. Like a business person. We have anyone here who has their own business? You're always looking for opportunities. The devotee is the greatest opportunist in serving Krishna. The people are bewildered. They're taking more and more shelter of their bodies. They're building more and more nuclear weapons. They're destroying the environment more and more without stoppage. This is the time for increased spreading of Mahaprabhu's mission. All right, any questions? Yes.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj. So whatever solution you provided, actually it's so pleasing when we truly become the real servant of Mahaprabhu. But even though we are Krishna conscious and we do our duties every day, but even though we inculcate the principles of Krishna consciousness at a very young age, but when kids grow up, or for that matter, even when we are spending 90% or 80% of our time in the day in the corporate world, it seems almost impossible to do in its real sense, because then what happens is even the service becomes a chore, and then you just somehow do your sadhana. But whatever this essence that you're saying, it's not there, that real bliss of doing Krishna consciousness. So unless we do it, how can we show it to our children in practice? So
Bhakti requires support. And when bhakti is performed in a community setting, then it's much easier. That's why Lord Caitanya says, Satam prasangam mama virya sambhado. Talks about Krishna, hearing and chanting about Krishna are more powerful in the association of devotees. This is the great wealth that a bhakti community confers upon its members. Yes, you're right. The day-to-day working world can be such a grind. But when you're a member of such an enlivening community as you have here, it carries you along. And you have an easier time to remember how fortunate you are, how you're in contact with the greatest fortune. So we all have to help each other. Otherwise, yes, you're right. The external world situation can be overwhelming. But as Srila Prabhupada once said, anything can be tolerated in good association. Some days you may be feeling a little weak, and someone else is stronger, they help you. Next week you're feeling strong, they're feeling a little weak, you help them. It's a loving network for inspiring one another to be carriers of Lord Caitanya's mercy. It's not a lonely job being a devotee. So you have to know what your assets are, what your wealth is. The association of devotees. And when devotees come together, whether physically or online, they nourish one another. So there's no need for us to feel alone, isolated, when you have the support of such a wonderful community as you have here. Any impediment, I'm convinced, with such a community as you have here, any impediment can be traversed. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for the wonderful lecture. I have always wondered about this same subject that you dealt with today.
Oh, thank you.
And let me give you a little bit background. I grew up in India. I lived there 27 years. And I came to this country about 15 years ago. I thought initially that I will go back in 2 years, but still 15 years and going and still stuck here. And you're right. I mean, USA is one of the most materialistic countries in the world, or I would say societies in the world, and it sucks you in. And those of us who come from India and are very highly skilled, educated, they slowly keep forgetting their, I would say, the original fabric that we had in India. I'm reminded of a time when I was in my MBA days in the 90s, and one of the teachers asked, how many of you have life insurance? And this was a class of about 120 students, and only one hand went up. And we used to read all these articles that all these rating agencies or company, those who do the analysis, social analysis, and say India has only 2% insurance, America has like a lot of insurance, people with a lot of insurance. So the notion was that America must be happy and India must be unhappy. But I never felt the need for having an insurance at that time, and that is where I want to begin my question. I see, whenever I go back to India these days, like I try to go at least once a year, I find that more and more Indian folks, they're starting to copy the West. And they're making the same mistakes that the people in the West have had, like the stress, the anxiety, the material, the money problems, and all those things. So my question to you is, Prabhuji, what is causing Indians, and I mean Bhagavad Gita and Sri Krishna came from, originally from India. The gold mine is right there. Then what makes the Indians forget their own culture and then imitate the West and then realize, oh, we made a big mistake, let's go back to Godhead?
There is Maya in the USA and there's Maya in India. Now, throughout the whole world, you have the solution, how to conquer Maya. So the question is, whether you live in India or live in the USA, will you take up the solution to conquer Maya? Remember the Kumaras and their question to Lord Brahma? They said, we're trapped. The senses flow into the sense objects flow into the mind. Self-realization is impossible because of that non-stop loop. And what was Hamsa-avatar's response? The only way you can escape the trap is by going to a higher level. Engage your senses in Krishna's service. Engage your mind and senses in bhakti. So whether you're going to be in India or you're going to be here, the solution is the same. And everywhere the problems are the same. The social media has spread the same problems everywhere. So now the question is, how much will we take advantage of this opportunity for becoming recognized by Krishna? That's the real question. Bhakti is meant for the whole world, whether you're born in India or not, no matter what your material designation is. Krishna has service for you. So you please, if you're already involved, wonderful. If you can increase your involvement, even better. Vaisheshika Prabhu.
I have a proposition to put before this esteemed audience. On one side, until you've seen His Holiness Devamrit Swami and heard him lead an artik, I don't think that you've lived properly in this lifetime. On the other side, hearing him speak is fulfilling our heart's desire and removing all obstacles. Either way, we win. But I leave the choice up to you, since there's about 30 seconds before the artik will start. If you'd like to stay and listen to Maharaj through the artik, or for that matter through the announcements and prasadam, we can do that, and I'm happy to do that. Or if you'd like to experience something you've never experienced before, and that is hear him lead an artik, you can choose that option also. So on one side we have artik, on this side we have Naimisharanya.
RT.
Artik? Okay. We want to thank, no, it's not that we want to thank, we do thank His Holiness Devamrit Swami for keeping us close. He very deliberately comes here, and even for a couple days to be able to be in his presence here and speak gives us the energy to continue on in our mission. He's a living, breathing, walking example of Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Maharaj, we thank you so much for coming here. Please always keep us close, never forget us. And all of us here, please let's thank Maharaj with a round of rousing applause. Thank you.